good morning rather. My name is Annie Dantabati, and I'm the former chairperson for the Santa Clara County Commission on the Status of Women, also a founding director of Coalition 2001, a grassroots organization committed to the concept of unity in diversity. I'm currently serving as the president of the Indo-American Business League. I'm delighted to welcome you all here this morning to participate in what I believe will be a very educational and enlightening day for all of us. Living in our home in America, so far away from the land of our birth and heritage, India, we often get so caught up in our daily lives and commitments that it unfortunately becomes very easy to forget the struggles and sufferings of those that we left behind. We are gathered here today to learn more about the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and specifically about the Kashmir conflict. When one hears the name Kashmir, it conjures up images of an incredibly beautiful land, almost majestic and serene in its beauty. Certainly my memories from childhood vacations bring up the beauty of Dal Lake and the houseboats where we spent many a family summer vacation. Add to this the mountains, the clear skies, the beautiful and talented people of Kashmir, and it is no wonder that one hears the description, Kashmir, paradise on earth. When India got her independence from Great Britain, the land was split into two nations, India and Pakistan. History tells us that the leaders of Kashmir at the time made the decision to accede to India, and as part of the agreement of Jammu and Kashmir's entry into the Indian Union, a special status was given to the state, which was enshrined in Article 370 of the Indian Constitution. The state continued to have a diverse population, which included a majority of Muslims, and a homeland to the Kashmiri Pandits. Left on their own, these inhabitants of Kashmir may have continued to live as good neighbors in peace. But this paradise today has become a hotbed of ideological conflict. Violence and terrorism plague its people and its land. Ownership of Kashmir seems to have become a bone of contention between India and Pakistan, leaving the two countries to engage in constant friction and battle. In the middle of all of this political fighting and violence, as is always the case, it is the innocent citizens, the ordinary men and women and children, whose lives have been displaced and turned upside down. And it is to these innocent victims that we want to turn our attention today. Today we hope to learn more about the plight of these citizens of Kashmir, whose lives have been so drastically impacted. We also hope and pray that a peaceful solution can be found that will end not only the suffering and flight of the Kashmiri Pandits, but also lead to a settlement which will eventually end the tensions between India and her neighbor Pakistan. We have a great team of talented presenters who will share their knowledge and present their thoughts to us this morning. The symposium is brought to us by the Indo-American Kashmir Forum and other premier organizations representing Kashmiri Americans. I would at this time like to introduce the convener of this event and also to recognize a few other dignitaries, following which we will proceed with what I trust will be a series of enlightening and educational presentations and discussions. The convener of this program is Mr. Jeevan Joshi, who is no stranger to our community, both Indo-American and mainstream. Jeevan is a community activist and a community leader who devotes a great deal of his time to issues of importance in our communities. This is no easy task because, like all the rest of us, he has his own life commitments. But those of you who know Jeevan will remember over the past decade or so receiving phone calls from Jeevan saying, you know, there's this issue and I really need you guys to get involved. He is a founding member and the national director of the Indo-American Kashmir Forum, and I understand that this is the second international symposium that he is convening since the problems in Kashmir escalated in 1990. So ladies and gentlemen, let's give a hand to Mr. Jeevan Joshi. I'd like to also recognize school board member Nina Moore. And we also have a member of the water district, Marty Kohler. And ladies and gentlemen, I do want to say if there's anyone else here who holds title and would like to be recognized, I and I'd be happy to announce it. We are now ready to get started with our actual panel discussions and presentations. We will have two presentations and panel discussions, and that will be followed by lunch. After lunch, we will hear from our keynote speaker, and this will be followed by two afternoon sessions. There will be a break from 4:15 to 6:30, and this will be followed by a cultural program. So we have a whole day of education followed by entertainment. Now, our first session for this morning is called Historical Perspective, and our moderator will be Mr. Subhash Razdan, who is from Atlanta and actually originally from Budgam, Kashmir. Mr. Razdan is currently an advisor to the Coca-Cola Company Procurement Advisory Council. He pioneered the efforts to have a life-size statue of the father of our nation, Mahatma Gandhi, or as we affectionately refer to him, Bapu. And this is on federal property in the United States, and these efforts are certainly appreciated by both the Indo-American and the mainstream community. Mr. Razdan is also a former national president of the NFIA. He has been listed as among 500 of the most influential Asian Americans by the popular New York magazine Avenue. And I would now like to invite Mr. Razdan up to the stage. And actually, before I do that, I'm actually going to have Mr. Jeevan Juchi come up. And following that, we'll have Mr. Razdan come up and introduce his panel for this first session. So Jeevan.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you very much. Good morning and welcome. It is really a great pleasure to have all of you here. And on behalf of the National Federation of Indo-American Associations, Indo-American Community Federation, FIA of Northern California, and FIA of Bay Area, and all of you, I would like to welcome all of you to this very focused international symposium titled From Paradise to Ideological Battleground. The purpose of this symposium is to inform and educate the interested audience on the latest events in Jammu and Kashmir state of India and discuss possible avenues of conflict resolution. We have with us today very distinguished speakers, as Annie already mentioned, from all over the US, including India, who are going to share their knowledge and concern about this burning issue. There's going to be a cultural night following this symposium with a very well-known Kashmiri singer, Nirja Pandit. There's going to be also a discussion, serious discussion, on preservation of Kashmiri culture, language, music, and way of life. We all know how a harmonious and pluralistic state of Jammu and Kashmir had its peace shuttered by cross-border terrorism. We also know how more than 300,000 Kashmiri Hindus have become homeless in their own country. It has now been almost more than 12 years, and their sufferings have not stopped. No country has faced as ferocious an attack of terrorist violence as India has over the past 2 decades. Thousands were killed by foreign-sponsored terrorists in Punjab, and thousands have been killed in Jammu and Kashmir. We know that such evil cannot succeed, but we have to strive to restore peace and normalcy in the beautiful valley of Kashmir and aspire a safe and secure homeland for all of us. It's time that all communities in America from the subcontinent get together and stop this mayhem. Both Indo-Americans, Pakistani Americans have an obligation to bring peace in the subcontinent and stop innocent lives from perishing. We all need to work together for the betterment of our future generations. After all, there is no substitute for peace. My special thanks to all the volunteers, to all the sponsors who have made this event possible. At this point, I would like to introduce our president of Indo-American Kashmir Forum, Dr. Vijay Sazawal, and I would like to invite him to please join us.
Namaskar and welcome. As Jeevanji said, I'm the National President of the Indo-American Kashmir Forum, the largest democratically constituted Kashmiri political organization, in fact, anywhere. We do nothing but political advocacy, 100% political advocacy. We have no social, cultural, or any other programs. Our mission is to inform from our perspective, not necessarily a Kashmiri Pandit perspective, but our perspective, what's really happening in Kashmir and how the problem evolved, what's the future there is. So we are very glad and thankful to all of you for taking time to being here. As somebody mentioned earlier, this is the second symposium we have held in the Fremont area. We have in fact held 4 symposia, including this one so far. The previous ones were in Washington, D.C., New York City, and the Fremont area, and this is the 4th one we are having also again here. We planned for this around the time there was a change in the administration. We recognized that we had dealt with the parties which were essentially out of the Democratic administration in the past. There was a new set of players coming on the scene, and we figured that it was a time to gather together, bring some people together to essentially look at a fresh perspective, draw inspiration from the audience, make them part of this evaluation and evolution process, and so that's why this symposium took its life. The change of administration is very significant for us. We have, as you know, we have moved from players which have changed, starting with, of course, the president himself, but even other players at lower tiers. We were dealing with Mr. Rick and the fourth, of course, now last Thursday, week from this Thursday, last Thursday, Ms. Christina Rocca was given her charter as the Assistant Secretary for South Asia. It's a new person. Hopefully we'll meet her in the near future, but again, that's a change. We have a change in Congress. We had Mr. Gary Ackerman, who was leading the India caucus, now replaced by Messrs. Ed Royce and Jim McDermott, and Mr. McDermott is right here, so we are having the right person in our party to tell about our perspective. Of course, recently there was a change in the Senate. Senator Jesse Helms has been replaced here by Joe Biden, the chairman of the International Foreign Affairs Committee, as it's called there. In general, I think from the speakers that you will see here today, you will hear from, which is really a collection of academic experts, former ambassadors, Kashmiri Pandit leaders, Kashmiri Muslim speakers, speakers from the Indian subcontinent, various organizations. It's really a major reflection of the evolution of our organization, how it has matured, how it has grown over the years, and in a large sense, with the support of the community and other people outside of the community. Let me mention now a few things about the symposium itself. As you heard, and he said, there are 4 panel discussions. Our intent would be, this is a free-floating discussion. We have founded no preconceived agenda. There is going to be no resolutions at the end. That is not the purpose of this symposium. It is simply to maintain a dialogue between the experts, between the leaders, between the public. So no particular directions have been given to anybody not to speak their will and their free will and of their free voice. We welcome diversity of views. Of course, at the end, the organization will decide what is best for its interests. So what we have done is we have speakers that will speak. Their assigned time, the moderators will introduce them. We'll request that the questions be held to the end of till the speakers have spoken up, and these will be collected on basically cards or pieces of paper. They will be given over to the moderator, so we'll have some people actually going around collecting the questions and comments that they have. These will be given to the moderator, and the moderator will obviously arrange those be responded by the appropriate person from the panel. So that would be the format we'll follow. That will allow us honestly an intelligent back and forth discussion, as well as allow enough time for the speakers to speak up. For those of you or some of you who are not familiar with this particular surroundings, the restrooms are in, I believe, on this side. Yeah, you have to go all the way around. Telephones also on that side. The lobby is on the other side. Of course, you came in from there, and we hope and we wish that this will be an enlightening and an entertaining time for all of you. We certainly would like all of you to feel that since you have given so much of your personal time to be here, that it was a time well spent. Certainly, I do wish that all of you, or at least some of you, will then at the end be able to go back and communicate to others what they missed by not being here. With that thought, thank you very much, and we'll move on to the sessions. Call on Subhash to head the first panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sazawal, for those very insightful comments and an overview. Before we start with this session, I'm just going to request the moderators that they keep an eye on the time, because we do want to make sure that we get all 4 sessions completed, and we want to give people a break between the day program and the evening. So if you could kind of keep an eye on the time, that would be helpful. And I'm now going to hand this over. Thank you.
Honorable Congressman Jim McDermott, a good friend of the community. Honorable Ambassador Schaefer. Honorable Deputy Consul General Adar. Esteemed Convener Ivanducci. Speaker, my fellow panel members, and all the distinguished participants. At the very outset, let me hasten to congratulate the members of IAKF, that's the Indo-American Kashmir Forum, the Kashmiri community at large, as well as the Indian American community, for organizing this challenging seminar with so many distinguished speakers. The format and the content is very impressive. The topic and the issue of Kashmir, however, remains complex and has to be looked at emotively and intellectually, passionately and dispassionately, subjectively and objectively, with due regards to ground realities in Kashmir. Let us not forget Kashmir, which is an integral part of India, has a history reaching back to Burzahum civilization in 4000 BC, almost 5,000 years ago. Let us not forget that India as a nation may be only 50 years old, but has a predominantly Hindu civilization which is more than 5,000 years old. We have with us here today experts on Kashmir, people from diverse walks of life to participate in this seminar. IAKF is making a sincere attempt to see if, at the end of the day, all of us with diverse ideologies and perspectives can manage to create a better understanding of the historical issues and dimensions of Kashmir. Ladies and gentlemen, My name is Subhash Rajdan, a native of Indo-American Kashmir. I will be the moderator for this session on historical perspectives. I'd like to initially recognize my fellow panel members, and then individually I will introduce them one at a time. I would like to request Hira Lal Khotadar to stand up. Dr. Yusuf Wadensky, please. We will devote approximately 10 to 15 minutes of time per speaker, and then we will take questions and answers at the end of the session. So I have no particular order to go through, so we would go in the order we are sitting here. So I would request Professor Sardesai to come over, but before he takes charge, I would like to say a few words about his impressive bio. Dr. Damodar R. Sardesai has been on the faculty of the University of California at Los Angeles since 1966. As a full professor from 1977 to date, has been holding a prestigious endowed chair on pre-modern Indian history. He's been a chairman of the Department of History at UCLA, director of the University of California's Education Abroad program in New Delhi from 1993-95. Professor Sardesai has authored and edited a dozen books on history, religion, environment, foreign policy, and strategic issues regarding India and Southeast Asia. He is a recipient of many awards. He was elected president of the prestigious and formerly Royal Asiatic Society of Bombay, 89 to 99. In 1979, he was elected fellow of the Royal Historical Society, Great Britain. Please join me in welcoming Professor Sardesai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that introduction, the details of which were provided by me, which means that I flattered myself. Before I begin, I would like to pay respects to the oldest historian in India, the one who wrote the first book on history, namely Kashmir's, Kallana's Raj Tarangini, which has been displayed here. As a historian, it's of great value to us. Is this working? In the few minutes that I have, in giving a historical perspective, I'm choosing only a few points. The historical perspective that will be germane to our discussion today would be only since 1947. Even that is a long period and so much has happened. And I would like to treat this along the lines of nationalism. In 1947, when India was partitioned, the subcontinent was partitioned, there were two nationalisms that we could talk of. But then, 1989 onward, we speak of a third nationalism, namely should Kashmir be independent by itself. Around 1947, when we talk of these two nationalisms, they were based on those who espoused the two-nation theory and those who rejected it. The two-nation theory said, propounded by Jinnah, said that Hindus and Muslims could not simply live together, and therefore there has to be a separate homeland for the Muslims. This was opposed, among others, notably a president and major leader of the Indian National Congress, a prominent Muslim scholar, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad. He said that if Muslims have a homeland in Pakistan, what happens to 105 million Muslims in India? But at that point of time, when the population was 360 million, about say 45 million people in the rest of India. He said, in fact, in the majority areas where Muslims existed, there would be no major problem in terms of what their wishes would be. But in the areas where Muslims were a minority, there would be real problems. They need the homeland. And as long as Jinnah is not willing to take all the Muslims of the subcontinent to his Pakistan, in fact, he made a remark that he does not want third-rate Muslims. He wanted only those well-qualified Muslims from Uttar Pradesh who made his bureaucracy later to migrate, not the rest of them. So that was one part. The second part was the Indian National Congress very reluctantly accepted Pakistan but did not accept the two-nation theory. If in course of time Muslim majorities are formed by whatever means, like say in Kashmir through the process of ethnic cleansing, then that would be a legitimate claim for joining Pakistan or for a separate homeland of Muslims. And so therefore, on grounds of theory, they rejected it. The second objection was that Muslims in the subcontinent, apart from those who created Pakistan, had contributed substantially to the Indian nationalist movement. And therefore, there was no reason for sacrificing their future in creating a homeland, and there would be a backlash against the remaining Muslims in the subcontinent. And I said two, but I'll add a third. And the third was the real fundamental beliefs of people like Gandhi, Nehru, Patel and others, who genuinely believed that all along Hindus and Muslims had coexisted beautifully in the country. The history is more of coexistence and cooperation than of confrontation and conflict, and that the British, in writing this kind of a theory, had created the groundwork for the divide and rule which divided the subcontinent. Therefore, this was a struggle of two nationalisms. Where did Kashmir stand? First of all, where did the princely states stand? While the two-nation theory was being propounded, Mr. Jinnah did not speak of the Indian native states, princely states. Neither did the Indian National Congress take up very much seriously the question of the Indian native states. So when that question came up, literally, the British, when they gave their verdict, the 565 princely states had a right to be even independent. Although Lord Mountbatten, the last Viceroy and the first Governor General of India, recommended that the issue be decided by the princely states on the basis of contiguity to Pakistan, either being west or east, or on the basis of, on the basis of majority populations in the areas. Those were the two grounds. The principle that a ruler of a state, princely state, had the right to sign on the dotted line whichever way and accede to either India or Pakistan, or theoretically remain independent, was recognized by Mr. Jinnah himself. Now maybe he did this because he expected that Junagadh and Hyderabad will go his way if he accepts this principle. But as a lawyer, he accepted the principle that it was entirely up to the ruler of the state to sign the accession to one dominion or the other. Now, in Kashmir, fortunately for India at that time, Sheikh Abdullah's organization, the National Conference, had since 1931 proclaimed itself as a secular organization, espousing the same principles as the Indian National Congress of Gandhi and Nehru. And as a personal friend of Nehru, Sheikh Abdullah therefore remained consistent all the way from 1931 to 47 in saying that Kashmir will remain secular, the National Conference will espouse secularism. When the raiders, Afghan raiders, manned by Pakistan, trained by Pakistan, sent their forces into Kashmir, and then the Maharaja acceded to this request to ask the Indian forces to come in. When the decision was made in New Delhi, in response to the Maharaja's urgent request, Nehru, Patel were in one room. In the next room there was Sheikh Abdullah, whom Nehru would consult at every stage of the discussion. They would then go to Mountbatten. And in a third room, there was in fact the Hindu Prime Minister of Kashmir, at that time, and it was he who opposed the accession of Kashmir to India. And Sheikh Abdullah readily and most enthusiastically endorsed it. Let me quote a little from what Sheikh Abdullah said to the United Nations Security Council. I have a long quotation, but I will give only the one or two sentences out of these. He said that the raiders looted our property and almost reached the gates of our summer capital, Srinagar. The result was that the civil, military and police administrations failed. In that hour of crisis, the National Conference came forward with 10,000 volunteers and so on. It is absolutely impossible for the tribesmen to enter our territory without encouragement from Pakistan. Hundreds of trucks, thousands of gallons of petrol, thousands of rifles, ammunition were supplied to them by Pakistan. I have thought all along that the world had got rid of the Hitlers. From what is happening in my poor country, I am convinced they have transmigrated their souls into Pakistan. My footnote would be that Sheikh Abdullah was a Muslim, but he was talking of the Hindu theory of transmigration of souls. The plebiscite offer, last he says, was made by Prime Minister of India when I think he had not the slightest need for making it. I repeat, when he did not have the slightest need for making it. I refuse to accept Pakistan as a party in the affairs of Jammu and Kashmir. I refuse this point blank. We have seen enough of Pakistan. The people of Kashmir have seen enough. End of quote, Sheikh Abdullah. The map of India itself in 1947, I submit as a student of history, was not drawn on the basis of a plebiscite or a popular vote. The birth of Pakistan was not owed to a popular vote. It was done on the basis of a British decision, the results of election to the Constituent Assembly, on a franchise which was far from universal. And the boundary line between India and Pakistan was drawn on the basis of a hurried demarcation of a British lawyer, Sir Cyril Radcliffe, who had no previous experience of India. Secondly, none of the 565 princely states had acceded to India or Pakistan on the basis of a popular vote of any kind. I feel, in retrospect, and I felt it at that time as a very young man in my teens, it was wrong on the part of Nehru, who had written history very well and shown a historical perspective, to disregard, in fact, the contemporary practice and law at that time and offer a plebiscite in Kashmir alone. Now, this situation continued. Kashmiris did not show, in fact, people of Jammu and Kashmir did not show any resentment toward India all the way from 1947 to 1989. How do I say this? I say this because when the wars took place between India and Pakistan, and there were raiders or there were others who came into Kashmir, it was the Kashmiris who picked them up and handed them over to the Indian military on both the occasions when the wars took place. In all the elections they participated. What went wrong in 1989, I think, is a major rigging of the elections. What happened as a prelude to 1989 was that previously, for several years, Indira Gandhi did not want Kashmir to be a satrapy of the Abdullah family or of the National Conference. She wanted a Congress rule there. And she played the Jammu card of the Hindu population. What went wrong was tremendous corruption in Kashmir. What went wrong was, despite tremendous amounts of money coming into Kashmir from Delhi, the money did not reach the masses. But what also went wrong, remember, around 1989, 1980, when this outbreak happened, was a mood in the world next to us, a mood where religion became suddenly important, fundamentalism became important. And that is traced to Iran, and from Iran to Afghanistan, Pakistan, Zia's regime, and so therefore a mood became of identified, of in fact underlining one's religion. And that is the point that I am coming to now, this new nationalism, the third nationalism, 1989 onward, of asking for separate Kashmir. Is it really based on a separate identity of Kashmiris, or is it based on an imported creed, an imported zeal, an imported jihad from the surrounding areas coming into Kashmir? And that worries us. That worries a lot of people. This is not a nationalism based even on a religion. This is nationalism based on international religion, on Islamic, pan-Islamic faith. This nationalism is based also on violence, on jihad. And all I ask you to refer to is a very important article written in Foreign Affairs of November and December 2000 by Jessica Stern, not a Kashmiri, not an Indian, not a Pakistani, but a blue-blooded American expert who was in fact director of Soviet Union and allied countries at that time in the National Security Council in White House. Member of the Council on Foreign Relations, many of you may have seen this article, which is very important, and if any of you want a copy of it, please let me know, I'll send you copies. In this article, entitled Pakistan and Jihad Culture, outlines for us a horrendous scenario, and it links Kashmir to this whole problem. And I quote again from this article, what it says: what began as an indigenous secular movement, mind you secular, what began as an indigenous secular movement for independence in Kashmir has become an increasingly Islamic crusade to bring all of Kashmir under Pakistan control. Pakistan-based Islamist groups, along with his and Kashmir-based created Jamaat Islami, partly funded by Pakistan, are now significantly more important than the secular Kashmir-based ones. The Indian government estimates that about 40% of the militants in Kashmir today are Pakistani or Afghan, and some 80% are teenagers. What kind of a movement, jihadi movement, is this? Jessica Stern says this poses a long-term danger to internal security and regional stability, especially of Pakistan itself. There are something like 40 to 50,000 madrasas today in Pakistan, and these madrasas are not regulated by the government. Except for 10%, they are not even registered with the government. These madrasas train Pakistani students, most of them in their early teens, offering them paradise, not this Kashmir paradise we are talking about, offering them paradise in heaven, if only they become martyrs in the cause of Islam. These 16, 17-year-olds received an education which is not supervised by their ministry. They equate jihad with guerrilla warfare. Now, jihad itself is a term the Muslim experts will tell you does not mean violence for the sake of violence. Jihad is supposed to bring equity and justice, a principally an inner striving to purify the self. That's what the original meaning of jihad is. But here in this jihad, it simply was equated with guerrilla warfare and was equated with the number of people of other religions killed. Let me remind you that when India and Pakistan were created, Pakistan was created, India became the successor state. 10% of the population of Pakistan was Hindu and other minorities, but principally Hindu minority. 10% of the minority in India were Muslims. Today in India, that 10%, thanks to a biological urge stronger in some than others, has probably gone up to 12 or 13% Muslims in India. In Pakistan, thanks to the ethnic cleansing between 1947 and 1950, the percentage of Hindus in Pakistan has been reduced to 1/2 of 1%. That was ethnic cleansing at that time when a large exodus took place. That was one ethnic cleansing. I am now referring to the second ethnic cleansing. When from the Kashmir Valley, where there were at one time 15% of the population was of the Pandit community alone, they were reduced to 4% to 3% by the time, maybe around last year. The tremendous exodus, therefore, of the Pandits, not occasionally as a matter of voluntary decision, but as a matter of cleansing, ethnic cleansing. In terms of the jihad, in terms of the guerrilla warfare, in terms of select killing of families, threatening families. I have friends here in California whose houses have been lost by them. They migrated from there to nearby Jammu, lived in camps there, some in camps in Delhi. We are talking of about 300 to 350,000 people removed from their homes, not in terms of a decision made by themselves, but forcibly from their homes where they had lived for not 1 century, but 2, 3, 4, 10 centuries. They had lived in those homes and in those same areas. This is a question of their heritage. This is a question of their identity. And that identity has been wiped out, tried to be wiped out in this process. No solution to the Kashmir question can take place without these pundits, and in fact I am enlarging it to Hindu population. I am not concerned just about the pundits, about the Hindu population of Kashmir being restored back to their, not necessarily to their homes, but at least to their villages, to their cities. And this ethnic cleansing should not be allowed at this stage anymore. Historical perspective in those terms, therefore, I would say that Jessica Stern's article is something that we should all read, because this is not an export of nationalism or creation of nationalism, not on grounds of a local area of Kashmiri ethnic nationalism. It is, in fact, jihad. And it is therefore we are talking of Taliban moving from Afghanistan into Kashmir. When Taliban moves in, there is nothing sacred that remains. Therefore, the warning to the whole world has to be, in terms of historical perspective, that we are witnesses to this history. And we will be guilty of that crime. That if we allow this kind of ethnic cleansing, which happened in Pakistan from 1947 to 50, to happen in Kashmir now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sadasai, for your enlightening. Our next speaker is going to be Dr. Yusuf Badinsky, but before I get there, I'd like to recognize my fellow directors from the National Federation, Mr. Anil Yadav and Chandru Bambre. I thought I saw him. If you can just stand up. Just a comment on, he talked about the second ethnic cleansing. I would take you back to the first ethnic cleansing, and around 14th century AD, just to give you an idea, we had almost 1,500 Hindu temples, shrines in Kashmir. And it's a history later on that we were reduced to just 11 families. So that, just to give you that dimension. So now let me introduce you Dr. Yusuf Badinsky, who is the director of the Congressional Task Force on Terrorism and Unconventional Warfare at the U.S. House of Reps. He is also the Director of Research at the International Strategic Studies Association, as well as a Senior Editor for the Defense and Foreign Affairs Group of Publications. He is the author of 8 books, as well as several book chapters, entries for the International Military and Defense Encyclopedia, and numerous articles in several periodicals including Global Affairs, Jane's Defense Weekly, Defense and Foreign Affairs, Strategic Policy, and Business Week. In the 1980s, he acted as a senior consultant for the U.S. Department of Defense and the U.S. Department of State. He was also a visiting scholar in the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome him.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. With Kashmir, one of the places that I like most. But I'll try to be very brief and start with probably something that is not of a historic nature, but I'm afraid that in the foreseeable future, unless there's a drastic change in the world, we'll be meeting again and again and again discussing the trials and tribulations of Kashmir. I'm afraid that right now there's no solution in sight. That's the starting point, not the why. The main problem of Kashmir is not, and the current struggle is not that one minority or another, religious or otherwise, has a legitimate or illegitimate or self-proclaimed grievance, and that applies to Kashmir, that may apply to Chechnya, to the Kurds and others. but the issue is what do they do about it? And in the case of today's troubled world of international terrorism is with whom does the minority in question does deals in order to further their own cause. And as a result of it is the question should be asked not of why do they fight, but in the name of whose interest do they fight. And fight includes terrorism. Because in the case of Kashmir, the problem is not so much just the problems of aspiration of one component of the population of Kashmir, in that case the Muslim population, but the fact that in pursuit of these objectives, they have walked into the death trap of making deals with sponsoring states, international crimes, and a variety of international ideologies that have since subverted and took over their struggle and now run it for their own interest, rather than the interest of these, in this case, the Muslims of Kashmir. Whether one agrees with them or not is completely and utterly beside the point. So one should look at what is driving the subversion and terrorist war in Kashmir right now, the war by proxy. And one can see that these are the strategic interests of the government of Pakistan, rather than the well-being of the self-proclaimed well-being of the population that is fighting. The current terrorist or war by proxy in Kashmir is destroying not only the non-Sunni Muslim population of Kashmir, but it's destroying the Sunni population of Kashmir also, because it is essentially eradicating the social and economic basis of the entire state. And the number one, statistically, the large majority of victims are actually brethren of the would-be mujahideen. Kashmir is a classical case of state sponsorship, Islamic state sponsorship, taking over an indigenous national liberation movement. In the mid-1980s, the ISI has taken over, with our America's knowledge, the fledgling Kashmiri liberation movement. The reason was that Pakistan was afraid of India and the Soviet Union then sitting in Afghanistan, ganging up on them and trying to divide the country in two by invading Pakistan to both directions. The idea was that if Pakistan destabilizes areas close to the Indian border, they would be able to buy time before the Indian could concentrate forces. They could have a foreknowledge, essentially having a strategic depth on the enemy's own territory. We understood that, we looked the other way, we did not understand the ideological drive behind that, which was the subversion of the Kashmiri movement into an Islamist movement. There's a lot of details about the training, the weapons that from USA and others that have been moved into, transferred into the Pakistani, by the Pakistanis into Kashmir, and by that matter into the Punjab, but that's history. The main problem is that Pakistan discovered in the process of getting involved in Kashmir a way to regenerate the whole problem of Jinnah's lost heritage. Pakistan of the 1980s was a state in crisis. If one really oversimplifies, and I'm doing injustice to the historian here, the birth of Pakistan, Islam was to be a glue that brings together the Muslim nations and giving them a joint entity. In 1971, Bangladesh was no longer Eastern Pakistan. And it was a country in crisis because the glue did not hold together. And it was asking itself, why are we there as a state? And the question was, okay, we're there to bring in the only component that Jinnah was dreaming about and was not in our Pakistan hand, and this is Kashmir. And that has become the raison d'etre for Pakistan's behavior, for the militarization of the country, for its, an explanation of its economic failures, i.e. we're putting everything for the jihad, everything to confront Indian aggression as a result of our commitment to the jihad, etc., at the expense of domestic freedoms, the military control over the country, the continued militarization, and eventually letting the jihadist groups and the whole Islamic Talibanization of the country continue. It's a good excuse, it worked. In the 1990s, there emerged or there added another major factor into the Pakistani grand strategy that have direct bearing on Pakistan, and this is the ascent of the People's Republic of China and the move westward. In the post-Cold War world, China is interested in surging along the Silk Road into Central Asia, anticipating a major energy crisis and shortage in East Asia. The Chinese would like to have as strong a hold over the energy resources of Central Asia, the Persian Gulf of the 21st century, and divert them eastward. Of course, we would like to move them westward. In all of that, India is perceived the greatest regional power whose presence prevents that surge westward. The only way the Chinese can divert India's attention from looking eastward and into the Chinese ascent, as I said, into Central Asia and into the Indian Ocean, Eastern Indian Ocean through Burma, is by making India preoccupied with troubles at home and troubles on the western frontier. And therefore, it is to that end that the Chinese are encouraging Pakistan to increase the militancy, the policy of brinkmanship, the promise that Pakistan's nuclear umbrella, intervention with the United States should need arise, tremendous amount of military and intelligence support, and all of that emboldens the Pakistanis, of course, to turn around and indeed keep India busy with the problems on its western borders. Kashmir is the focal point of that effort. And we've seen indeed a tremendous, in the early 1990s, in concurrence with that change in the Chinese strategy, a profound change in the military capabilities and qualities of the Kashmiri jihadists. A lot of equipment that was provided to the ISI by the United States during the 1980s, with the guarantees that it will go only to Afghanistan or be returned to the Central Intelligence Agency, can be found today in the Indians' collections of material recovered from the Mujahideen in Kashmir. I've been there, I've dealt with the Afghan jihad, I've dealt with the Kashmiri jihad, it is our stuff. A lot of brand new Chinese material finds its way into Kashmir. Now, it can be argued that the Pakistani armed forces are so negligent they cannot control their own stockpiles. However, one can steal one weapon, two weapons, three weapons, not complete serials, list of serial numbers, i.e. complete storehouses, definitely not training manual, spare parts, and the supplies that go with ordinary supply and training of equipment. There's only another factor of that Pakistanization, if you want, of the Kashmiri jihad, and that is the vast majority of the high-quality operatives or terrorists now crossing over are not Kashmiris. They're not even Indian. They are Pakistanis recruited all over Pakistan, most of them from specific military units and paramilitary units, some of them even carrying their own ID badges from past employment, which are now available in India, and of course the Afghans and the Arabs and the various other Central Asian terrorists that the percentage of whom keep growing among those penetrating and crossing over into India from across the border. The current war over defense is another indicative of how important the Indians' effort to border the LOC and the Pakistanis fighting against it. I think that the turning point, and I'm jumping really bullet-wise, the turning point in the transformation of the Kashmiri Jihad into essentially an instrument of Pakistan's grand strategy was the war in Kargil in the spring and the summer of 1999. Officially, it was a case of Pakistani Mujahideen crossing over and trying to liberate the countries and escalating. However, if just we take that at face value, there's something completely and utterly illogical in that development. The Pakistani jihad is supposed to be, the Kashmiri jihad, the Pakistani would tell you, is the war for liberation of the Muslims of the valley, who are predominantly Sunni. However, the areas, the population in the areas where the bulk of the crossing of the border took place is Muslim Shiites and Tibetan Buddhists. What do the Sunnis have to do there? Whom are they going to liberate? The Shiites who have their gods, or the Buddhists who don't want to have anything to do with them? But on the other hand, if you look at it as from a Pakistani strategic point of view, Chinese were building up at that point on the eastern border near Leh and Ladakh. The only way to prevent the Indians from properly reacting to the Chinese buildup was disconnecting Highway 1 that is leading from Srinagar all the way up to Leh Ladakh. And what the Pakistani forces, and these were predominantly Pakistani forces rather than Mujahideen forces, despite all of the allegations to the otherwise, they came very, very close to disconnecting the route. And during the fighting, India had to concentrate forces in the Daras area rather than push them all the way north to where they were supposed to be in order to deter Chinese incursions. So that was a strategic move. It had nothing to do with the jihad, but this is the essence of the present-day Kashmiri jihad, an instrument of Pakistani grand strategy, not regional strategy, not an effort to liberate one segment or another of the population of Kashmir. So, where are we heading from now? We're entering into a period of swing military activities. When the weather is good, there will be an escalation. When the political conditions are like, there will be an escalation. When there's international pressure, there will be a reduction in the intensity of the military activity and a flare-up of a variety of political activities to one extent or another. The ceasefire, the unilateral ceasefire declared by the Indian government last fall, and the various other political initiatives were very important in their international impact. They have very little success or impact on the ground simply because the main issue is not dealing with the Mujahideen, but with those who give them orders. There has not been a parallel reduction or containment in the activities of the training camps in near and around Muzaffarabad, in so-called Azad Kashmir, nor has there been any reduction in the preparations of Kashmiri cadres or cadres to go for Kashmir in the various training camps in Afghanistan and the whole Taliban preparation to assist the Kashmiri brethren. Nor was there any change in the intensity. Actually, there's a continued increase in the intensity of the Bin Ladens of the world and their activities in support of the Kashmiris. It is imperative, though, for India to take on the initiative militarily and try to contain the subversion at home and to separate between the popular bases and the would-be liberators, because the moment the popular base has been destroyed, it is much easier to contain a subversion. All in all, we need to recognize here, we need to recognize what is happening in Kashmir, and I think that it's imperative to make sure that Washington and other capitals of the world understand what is happening in Kashmir, what should be done, what are the political efforts that need to be made in order to make Pakistan realize that this is not the way to pursue regional strategies. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yusuf, for your insights into the terrorism. I'd just like to bring one statistic here. And this is for the period of 1988 January to 1998 October, 10 years. And the total incidents of terrorism in Kashmir, 38,753. And total all over the rest of the world was only 4,441. Which means 9 times, Kashmir had 9 times more incidents of terrorism. And the way it was distributed, these 38,000 were targeted attacks on the security forces, 18,000, targeted attacks on civilians, 9,793, and indiscriminate killings with explosive and arson attacks, 10,896. Just to add that aspect. Our next speaker now is Dr. Hiralal Khordadar, who's well known in our Kashmiri community. He's part of the senior management team of Fortune 500 company. He has been associated with IAKF from its inception. He is currently chairman of Ohio Award of Excellence, an initiative led by the Governor Clapp in Ohio. He is also a member of the board of directors of WINOC, which is Work in Northeast Ohio Council. Please welcome Dr. Khordadar.
High-tech slides are there, or we will have to do without them. Okay. I actually took some time to prepare some nice slides to make my point, but it's good that those slides are not working.